When my feet grow heavy and my eyes go dim, hearing fades to whispers, I know your love can heal all my sin. Thank you that you're with me. Beautiful words I hear within. No, you will restore faith. Young child, you are my king. Bless your name, and we welcome you to join us. We bless your name, and we welcome you to join us here. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. We bless your name, and we welcome you to join us here. We bless your name, and we welcome you to join us here. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. May our words be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears.
Hear, O Yisrael, Yahuah our Elohim, Yahuah is one. And you shall love Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. And the second one is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Glad you're all here. Let me fix my settings up over here a little bit and send the salutation out. Here we go. All right. So it's been a nice week for me, and I hope it was for all of you too. And now we're blessed because we get to begin to enter into Yahuah's rest on Yom Shabbat. It's a delight. And we're going to have back-to-back Shabbats this week. So the 25th will be the weekly Shabbat, which is a delight for us. And then the following on the 26th will be Teruah, or trumpets, which is another Shabbat. And so be aware of that. You treat it just like you do any other Shabbat. They're both Shabbats. And we have other appointed times coming in rapidly after this one. And so the next few weeks, Natsarim will be very busy observing Yahuah's appointed times and worshiping and praising him, and praying for each other, intercessor prayer for each other, and showing each other compassion and love and concern for each other and pray for each other. This is a great time to communicate with Yahuah, not only for our own needs and wants and scriptural understandings, but for others as well, especially when we get into the days of awe, leading up to the Day of Atonement. And then 5 days afterwards, booths or tabernacles or Sukkoth. Okay, so important times coming up real rapidly now. Let me just say that we have our friend, our brother, our guest speaker, Lew White, with us this evening. And Lew will be addressing these 3 appointed times this fall that's coming up now. And he's going to do a long, lengthy explanation and study on them this evening with us. So hopefully anyone that's still kind of shaky on what to do or what they mean or any of this, by watching this evening's lesson presented by Brother Lew White, will clear all the fog up for us. Okay, so let me just say hi to a few people here real quick before we get going, and we'll bring Brother Lew in. Dave Messenger, glad you're here, brother. Diane, glad you're here. Yame and Ruah, glad you're here. Ladder Rain, glad you're here. Lair Bear, glad to see you, brother. Been missing you. I think you've been on here though with another name. I'm not real sure, but glad you're here, bro. Usha Aleph Ta, glad you're here. Peggy Russell, glad you're here. Maya, glad you're here. Joseph Aaron, glad you're here, brother. Phyllis, glad you're here, sister. Okay, so I'm on to go ahead and open this up. We can bring 10 people in. This is going to be presented precisely like the Zoom at Noon is. We want people to come in, but please control your mics, and you got to turn off the YouTube, leave StreamYard on, and control your mic. If you have questions, you can raise your hand or whatever, or open your mic and ask Lew, especially when he has a pause or something. And then at the end, we'll all be on here, and he'll open it up for any more questions or comments or anything that you don't quite get. You can ask him. And so we're going to handle this kind of like a Zoom at Noon. So control your mics and turn off your YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and put the invite in here and then bring Lew in. And we'll get started. All right. So come on in quickly as you can. If you're wanting to come in, come on in. I'll stick it out here a few times here. Y'all see it? There's the link to come into the StreamYard. Love to fill this up with guests if we can. So don't be shy. Come on in, and then we'll get started here if we can. So, hi, Diane. Glad you're here. I'm gonna mute you, sister. There's 3. Come on, we got 7 more. Just try to fill this up, and we can get going. Anybody else? Yami and Ruel, Peggy, Phyllis. Y'all gonna come in? Lair Bear, Dave. Anybody? No? All right. Okay, so if you just change your mind, I'll see you down here and I'll bring you in. So just come on in if you want. And Lou, are you there, brother?
Yes, I am. Here, I'll turn my camera on. Hey.
Hey, everybody. Lew White live.
Hey. That's the best kind to have. You know.
I'm going to turn it over to you, brother. I'll be here the whole time. If you don't see me, I'm still listening, okay?
Yes. Okay.
And if you need me, just let me know. I'm not going anywhere. Okay, I'm going to battle out now. Let Sander in.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. We're going to be talking about basically the events that are ahead of us, and they're unfulfilled things about the redemption plan that Yahuah is going to present to the whole world. And if you're on the right side with him, you're going to do very well. But if you're not, he's got some horrible things to present to you. But the 7th month of the year is, in the agricultural picture that he's put everything, is a harvest time. And the first day of the 7th month is a very special time, because when the real one comes, we're supposed to have blowing a shofar or hearing one. This is a type of shofar. And that'll be in about 2 days, 2 sunsets from here. Let's see, it'll be the 2nd day of the week. Actually, the end of the 1st day of the week is when it begins. Yeah, this year. And I should put on the record, when we're recording this, is in the Roman calendar, for everybody's understanding, it would be September the 23rd. And this is actually what they call the equinox. It occurred early this morning, in the middle of the night. And the equinox is when the sun is up for half the time, and the night is equal to the same time. So you have an equal night with this equal day. And that is kind of like a very important marker, because it begins winter, actually, in the Hebrew. The Hebrew only has 2 seasons. And I'm going to talk about that word seasons just a little bit, because we have to start at the beginning. Winter and summer. That's when Yahushua mentioned summer. He said, you know that when the buds appear, that summer is near. It's not here yet, but it's near when the buds come. And when the leaves turn and drop off, and obviously it's winter time, or near winter. But the word for winter in Hebrew is koref. There's only 2 seasons, and the witchy calendars have 4 seasons. I like that band, the 4 Seasons, but there's only really 2 seasons in history in Hebrew. And that's winter, koref, and summer, kayetz, which refers to life. And of course, we're really referring to the northern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere, assuming that the earth is a globe, and You know, it's obvious that it is, but those that doubt it can go down south and find warmth in the winter, and the sun is the same sun, you know. But we've got winter and we've got summer. Summer is a darker time, and Kayet's summer is a lighter time, I should say, and winter is a dark time. So it's kind of like that's the way he divided up the earth. And the festivals that we observe are according to the northern hemisphere. They're not established in any way by the southern hemisphere. That's an important thing to mention. People in Australia have reverse climate than the northern hemisphere. So anyway, to start off where it began, where did the idea begin? Well, it began in the first week of creation. And I want to read a little bit from Bereshith, or Genesis, chapter 1, where he mentions the seasons. I'll get that set up here for you. Okay? And we'll start with, let's start with verse 7. So you have some context. We have to put this stuff somewhere. In verse 7 of the very first chapter, Bereshith, or Genesis, quote, "And Elohim, Aleph Tah, made space and separated the Mayim," that's the waters, which were under the space, from the Mayim, that's the waters, which were above the space. And it was so. And he's going to put some things in the space. And Elohim called the space Shamayim. And that word is based upon Mayim. Shamayim. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second Yom. That's the second day. Now, we're going to move into the third day so you can see the context. And Elohim said, "Let the Mayim," that's the waters, "under the Shamayim be gathered together into one place, and let the dry ground, or dry land, appear." And it was so. And Elohim called the dry land Eretz. That's what we understand as earth, in this context especially. And the collection of the Mayim he called Yamim. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, "Let the Eretz," that's the earth, "bring forth grass, the plant that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the Eretz." And it was so. And the Eretz brought forth grass, the plant that yields seed according to the land, to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third Yom. And Elohim said, now this is where it really gets important with the festivals. Okay? And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be in the space of the Shamayim, to separate the Yom from the Lila." Now that's the day, like the daylight, from the Lila, and the Lila is night. And let them be for signs and appointed times. There's that word, appointed times, Moedim. And for Yomim, that's days, and years. And let them be for lights in the space of the Shamayim, to give light on the Eretz, that's the earth. And it came to be so. And Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the Yom, or the day, and the lesser light to rule the Lila, the night. And also the stars. He made the stars too. Nothing's too hard for him. And Elohim set them in the space of the Shamayim to give light on the Arets, and to rule over the Yom, the day, and over the Lila, the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the fourth Yom. Now that's the fourth day. We just heard the context of the several days, the second, third, and fourth day. And he created the lights on the fourth day. Now the week was already underway. So if people are teaching you something about the moon is establishing the beginning of a week, no, this is a separate thing. And that he separates this in his commandment too, when he gives the appointed times to us in Leviticus 23 and Deuteronomy 16. He separates what he's doing with the week, the 7-day week, and then he starts over again later. And we'll read that. But anyway, this is the context. That's why we're beginning at the beginning, because therefore the purpose of setting the days that we know day and night during the week, so we can count the 7 days of the week. And he also established them for appointed times, and for days, and for years. So appointed times. So there's got to be appointed times. Now we don't know of any appointed times that he sets up directly from this point until he sets them up later. But he did say that this is going to apply to those. And then we want to look at the 7 appointed times. And these 7 appointed times, some of them were kind of, they're all redemptive shadows. So we shouldn't be upset with other people that have misunderstandings about things. But there's 7 days in the week, and there's 7 appointed times, generally. And what we've got here is, it starts off with Sukkoth. Not Sukkoth, Pesach. And then Matzah, which follows Pesach. And then we've got Bikurim in the midst of the week of Matzah. And then we've got the fulfillment of the fourth appointed time, and that's what they call Pentecost, or Shavuoth. Shavuoth, don't be afraid of it. These words are Hebrew. That's what they're transliterating. You got Pesach, Matzah, that means bread. Pesach means Passover. Bikurim means firstborn, which is the resurrection of Yahusha. It also means first fruits. And that's what they did on the first day of the week, during the week of Matzah. They waved the barley. And Shavuoth is a word that based on the word Shabua, which means 7 days, or 1 week. It's based on the word Sheba. So the Shavuoth, the root is the word 7, Sheba. And Shavuoth itself is that's the plural word, but Shabua is 1 week, and Shavuoth is more than 1 week. And it's actually 49 days up to the 50th day when that festival occurs. And that was the giving of Torah at Sinai. Very important. Now these first 4, the red and the tan and the yellow and the green, those are fulfilled, but we still observe them. Now look at the last 3. This is what this video is going to study. Okay? One's called Teruah, and that's the first day of the 7th month. And that's coming up in a couple of days. We're in the year 2022 right now, and it's going to occur on the 2nd day of the week coming up. And then we've got that word Teruah. It's based upon the idea of a shout. And we shout with our voices if we have to, But we're told to hear a shofar, a ram's horn. And one day that's going to be fulfilled with a terrifying sound across the entire earth, and he's going to shake the heavens. It's going to be the voice of Yahuah crying out. They say that it'll be the trumpet of Yahuah. And they were blowing trumpets at Shavuot too on the mountain when they were given the Torah. So that was shaking the earth too. But this is going to shake the earth and the heavens when he blows that shofar. Then we have 10 days later a dark day called Kafar, which we get our word cover from, the day of the covering, Kafar. And that's the 10th day of the 7th month. And then we have what predicts the wedding feast, as some of us understand, Sukkoth. That's the idea of a marriage that's going to occur when he brings us into his tent. But most people look back, and they're looking back at the tents that they dwelled in the wilderness, which he does mention in the commandment. And that's to remember that too. So it's not to forget it. We want to remember everything. But then we've got the Sukkoth has 2 Sabbaths, one at the beginning and then one 7 days later. And we'll talk about that. And it's a 7-day festival. So we have the names in Hebrew, that we're going to reiterate them. But what these are high Sabbaths, as they call them. And they're redemptive shadows of things to come. Paul talked about it. These are shadows of things to come. So if they're outlines, they're not the reality. But what is casting the shadow is being fulfilled by our Messiah. Yahusha is the fulfillment of these. We're not. We're observers, and we understand them. But a lot of people will say, in fact, most people will say, well, what do I have to do? Well, observe. You can do what you're commanded to do. You should make yourself a little tent for Sukkoth, and you should take the day off at the first day and the 7th day of the festival. It's not based upon the week, though. This is something completely separate. And it's not easily understood right at first, but once you see the logic behind it, you'll say, oh yeah, well this is only confusing because there's a Roman calendar involved, and plus the beginning of a day is so confused. And recently, the Romans start their day at midnight, which makes absolutely no sense. And then we've got his day starts at sunset, which he says here. He says it 7 times. I mean, you're reading the first chapter of Bereshith or Genesis, and he says, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. So the first day was behind you, and he said there was evening, and that means Ereb, and that means darkening. And then there was morning the first day. So it's both of those things. And yet people get confused. They think, oh, he's only talking about the morning. No, he's talking about both, because day has more than one meaning in Hebrew. It can mean a range of time, but in this case it means literally a day. 12 hours and 12 hours. In this case, the equinox presents it as 12 hours of night and 12 hours of day. And then it starts getting more time for dark, more night, length of the night, and it gets longer and longer and longer and longer until it finally reaches its maximum length. And it turns into a reversal again, and the sun seems to be going further and further down, and then it rises, in a way that makes the days a little bit longer suddenly. So the days get longer and longer and longer until what they call the solstice, which is actually the sun. It means literally sun stop. Solstice means sun stop. So we're getting off on that, but I want to pay some attention, first of all, like I did, to the very origin of the words and where they come from. And we'll be revisiting those as we study the Hebrew. But I want to show you a little, for this year only, for 2022, if this is being recorded, you can play this back. You can see the 7th month appointments for 2022 are right here. And you can see that in a couple of days, the first day of the 7th month is going to appear. And it gives you the exact date for the Roman calendar so you can track it, because we're scattered out here among the nations. And I've got the names of the festivals for the 7th month written in red. Okay, so I'm holding it up there in case you need time to write that down or jot it down, in case you're watching this in replay. And remember, today it won't be that way every year, but it's like the year 2022. So next year, 2023, it'll be a different set of dates, but the same pattern, you know. The first day is a day of rest. The 10th day is a day of definite rest, and absolute no work. You don't even eat. It's the fast. And that's mentioned in Acts 27, verse 9. So that's part of this 7th month. But we're looking forward to the fulfillment, so it's a very scary day. And I mentioned that in detail in this book called The Reapers. And this book is all about the 7th month and the things that are ahead of us. And we can read some of this, some of the things from the prophet Joel, or Yahuah, yeah. So anyway, we covered a little of this, and we might revisit this if you all need help with that. But I want to also discharge any possible paranoia or horror or sorrow over people doing things differently, because the teachers out there have over 30 calendars, and they've departed, a lot of them, because they're mostly Ephraim. They're the scattered tribes from the north, Reuben, Zebulun. We refer to them by the lead tribe, Ephraim. Ephraim is a precious child, and Yahuah is going to do good things for us. We're all mixed together anyway, so, you know, everybody's Abraham's seed now. But I want to point out in Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 17, I want to read something that's very interesting. It's interesting in a couple of ways. This passage in Nehemiah chapter 8 is interesting because it uses the short form of Yahusha's name. Yahusha's got 5 letters in it: Yod, He, Ua, Shin, Ayin. And in this one case, it's the only case where the name is shortened. See, there's the 5 letters down here. We've got Yod, He, Ua, Shin, Ayin. And this Shin Ayin is a suffix. These last 2 letters right here. But the first 3 letters are actually the name Yahuah. And so we've got a suffix there. But in the case of Nehemiah 8:17, in the Hebrew, if you look at an interlinear, you'll see it. They have shortened his name to Yeshua. Now, it's spelled this way, in one place. That's Aramaic, of course. That's not real Hebrew. That's what we brought back from Babel. That's the Aramaic script. You got Yod, Shin, Ua, Ayin, Yeshua. And it's phonetically, it's spelled this way in our Latin letters, Yeshua. And it's Hebrew word number H3444. And it means salvation. And that word is used about 28 times. But in real Hebrew, it looks like this: Yod, Shin, Ua, Ayin. That's actual Hebrew. That's pictographic. And this is not pictographic. That's a Babylonian script. Now, let's see. I was going to read you Nehemiah chapter 8. This is remarkable. Oh, well, I can do it in the BYNV, or I can do it up here. I think I've got that right here, 8:17. In Nehemiah 8 is really interesting because also it's actually talking about the 7th month festivals, particularly Sukkoth, or what they call tents or tabernacles. Now, at chapter, all right, we're going to get back to, we're kind of jumping ahead to the other festival here, but we'll read it. At Nehemiah 8, verse 16, it says, "And the people went out and brought back branches and made booths, or tents, on their own rooftops." It's kind of like what Phyllis and I do, only we're in the wrong city, aren't we? We need to be in Jerusalem, but we can't go there because we're scattered. And in their courtyards. It's actually I didn't catch that. What was that?
I just ignore that, Lou. Ken came in and he didn't have his mic turned off yet.
Oh,
there was no
that's
question.
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So they brought back branches of trees, and they made actual little booths, which they never really lived in booths themselves. And I'm going to show you that they admit this. Okay. And they made some booths in the court of the house, or the Mishkan that they were building for Yahuah, and in the squares by the water gate and the gate of Ephraim. Now this is verse 17 of chapter 8 of Nehemiah. The whole assembly who had returned from exile after 70 years made booths and lived in them for the 7 days. From the days of Yahusha, now that's the one they call Joshua. In that particular place, it's actually spelled by that short form, Yeshua, the son of Nun, until that day. So they had never done this since the days of Yahusha, the son of Nun, up to that period that they were doing it for the first time in 908 years. So when they came out of the wilderness, they entered the land. Apparently they did it a little bit, then it faded away for some reason. We don't know why, because you notice that it's never mentioned from the book of, they call Joshua, the book of Yahusha. It's never mentioned up to from the Exodus all the way up to this point, 908 years, roughly. It's over 900 years. So that's pretty amazing. So what other festivals did they ignore? Well, it only says this one, but if they had this one, it seems like you would see it mentioning other ones, the appointed time. So the annual Sabbaths were pretty much ignored for 900 years. And then they started doing it again, and they were rejoicing greatly, it says, and day after day, from the first to the last day of Sukkoth, or tents. And on the 8th day, they held an assembly according to the ordinance. They were doing what it said for the first time in 908 years. I just found that to be intriguing. A lot of people overlook that. And so when you're seeing your brothers and sisters maybe looking at the moon a little differently, and you're out here with them, dispersed, scattered, Be kind to them. They're doing their best, and you're doing your best. And I want to read another interesting point that has to do with us obeying commandments. And these particular commandments will come upon us in the last days. We've got a track here in Dabarim, or what they call Deuteronomy chapter 5. And this is the chapter just before the introductory theme that our brother Mark quotes. Hear, O Israel. Yahuah our Elohim. Yahuah is one. Well, that's in Deuteronomy 6. But what he's saying is, these words, which you are to guard carefully, are written in Deuteronomy 5. That's what he's referring to. And they're to write them on their doorposts and on their gates. And it's right here. I'll read it to you. I am Yahuah your Elohim, starting at verse 6 in Deuteronomy 5. Who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, to kind of remind them who he is, out of the house of bondage. And these people listening to this lived through it. They were the ones that he delivered. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of that in the Shemayim above, or which is in the Eretz beneath, or which is in the Mayim under the Eretz. Are those words taking root yet? And you do not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, Yahuah your Elohim, am a jealous all, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children, to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commandments. You do not bring the name of Yahuah your Elohim to ruin, for Yahuah does not leave him unpunished who brings his name to ruin. Guard your Yom Shabbat, to set it apart. Now that would be the seventh day of the week, not based on the moon. It's the week. It's completely separate. To set it apart as Yahuah your Elohim commanded you. 6 Yomim, or days, you labor, and shall do all your work, but the seventh Yom is a Shabbat, a rest, of Yahuah your Elohim. You do not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates, so that your male servant and your female servant rests as you do. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahuah your Elohim brought you out from there by a strong hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore Yahuah your Elohim commanded you to observe the Shabbat. I want to remind you too, that one commandment has far more words than all the rest of them combined, and yet his word is ignored. Respect your father and your mother, as Yahuah your Elohim has commanded you, so that, returning, your Yomim, your days are prolonged, so that it is well with you on the soil which Yahuah your Elohim is giving you. And this is the sixth commandment. You do not murder. The seventh is you do not break wedlock. The eighth is you do not steal. And the ninth is you do not bear a malicious witness against your neighbor. Now, you can be telling the truth about your neighbor, but if it's a malicious and you're lying or you're telling the truth, you're releasing information into the hearts and ears of someone that does not know this person or may know this person, and you're destroying their reputation. Don't do it. He hates it. It causes division. And the 10th commandment is you do not covet your neighbor's Asha, that's his wife, nor do you desire your neighbor's house, his field, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. Now, in other words, private ownership is real. You can own something that Yahuah blessed you with, or you bought, and he lets you keep, and it's yours. And if someone takes it from you, that's a crime. That's a sin. Okay, now, he's talking about returning to your tents. Okay, that's because they're in the wilderness. Yeah, they're in the wilderness, and this is what Sukkoth is hearkening back to each year, to remember the time that we dwelled in tents. And I think I pretty much covered that, but I wanted to read, let's see, Deuteronomy chapter 3, I think it is. Chapter 3.
Hey, Brother Lou.
Yes.
Brother Lou.
Yes.
I'm on mute you real quick. I got a question. I was wondering if you could, like in Leviticus 23 there, where it says around the 23rd verse there, it talks about trumpets falling on a new moon. And then it goes on to speak of the fast, the Day of Atonement, and then Kafar, and then booths, or on the full moon. And I was wondering if you could kind of explain how within this 15-day period of the new moon to the full moon, why are these called days of awe? Because most people I can't find the words day of awe, but I know it's a traditional Hebrew term. But I was wondering if you could do that in Leviticus 23, if you wouldn't mind. So I think it starts around verse 23, Leviticus 23. Yeah, that's my question. I don't know if I'm being clear with it or not.
Yeah, we'll get to this.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, we'll get this. Am I muted? Okay.
No, not now. You're not.
Okay, what verse was that you wanted me to point out?
Well, from Leviticus chapter 23, it starts in verse 23. The trumpets is on the new moon, and then 10 days later comes Kafar, the fast, and it's on the full moon. And those are called the days of awe, but I can't find anything in scripture that identifies or describes the days of awe. But I know they're called that. And then, of course, 5 days later, we have the beginning of Booths, which is an 8-day program. But so I was just kind of wondering about that days of awe, brother.
Am I muted? Okay, now we're gonna pick up now with a question that was just asked, and it has to do with something that popularly is called the days of awe. And I related that to another scripture that deals with, I think it's in Revelation, crowds or multitudes in the valley of decision during the time of great distress. Yahushua talked about it in Matthew 24, and it's mentioned in Revelation 2. The multitudes that are in distress are in big trouble. And I think it was during this 10 days, because after that shofar blows and the earth and the heavens shake, there's 10 days that is traditionally called the days of awe. So it's the first day of the 7th month up until and including, I guess, the 10th day. And it's called the 10 days. So it would include the 1st and the 10th. So we've got a phrase there, the days of awe. And leading up to that, when the reality comes, the crowds, the multitudes, are going to be in the valley of decision. And that may be a Hebrew idiom for being, I've got to get myself situated so that I'm not going to be in trouble. Because I've been listening to people, and people are going to be talking, and they're going to hear that they've got to get immersed, and they've got to call on the name quickly, and there's going to be crowds. People are going to be absolutely terrified. And then they're going to get more terrified. But I'll read this text, and you can hear about how this idea gets going. Leviticus 23, and Yahuah spoke to Musa, saying, "Speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, in the 7th month, on the first yom, or day of the month, you have a rest, a remembrance of blowing of trumpets, a set-apart mikra. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah." And Yahuah spoke to Musa again, on the 10th yom of this 7th month is the yom, or day of atonement. It shall be a kodesh mikra for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah, and you shall do no work on that same day, on that same yom. For it is the yom of atonement, or a covering is what it is, yom kafar. That's where we get the word cover, kafar. And to make atonement for you before Yahuah your Elohim. Now this day, the 10th day, is referred to in Acts 27, verse 9. And it's referred to by the name the fast. The fast. You're afflicting your being. And the reason that that's the 10 days of awe, or that's what it's likened to, is because people are going to be in serious distress. The world is going to be changing around them, and people are going to be running to and fro and going, what's happening to the world? There's things falling, there's floods, the sun, and then the day of darkness is the day of the fast. And seraphim, or malachim, angels, are going to be released. And they're held back right now, waiting for this particular day. And it's going to be the scariest day that has ever been, and there will never be a day like it. It's going to be so ferocious. And Yahuah talked about it. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it should not be, let the reader understand or perceive. So that means it could be something written. They're seeing something that's written, and it's an abomination. I have my theory about that, but it's standing where it should not be. They perceive it. It's been there, and they just never knew it was there. We'll talk more about that at another time. Anyway, this is the 10 days of awe that they refer to. And I think it's the most likely the phrases that we read this in is multitudes or crowds. Crowds, are in great distress, and they're in the valley of decision. Now, their name is it's up to them too. They participate in the response of the love that Yahuah gave by shedding his blood for them. And they may be just realizing this and going, I've been ignoring this. People on their deathbeds go, I have been such a fool. I have not paid any attention to your commandments. I didn't know what you wanted. And I'm sorry about that. And they repent on their deathbed. It's a deathbed conversion, as they say. But live your life every day for Yahuah and not for yourself. And every day you'll get more like him, because he'll purge the dross out of your heart and your mind. But that's the 10 days of awe that they're referring to. It isn't possibly anything else. I mean, this is the biggest candidate for those 10 days. And we're about to enter one right now. And we never know. Up until the first day of the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar, we never know that this might be the one. So we have to listen and be ready and have our loins girded, our minds alert, because one of these days we're going to be changed. The ones that are following him, in the twinkling of an eye. It's going to happen in the 7th month. And we're about to enter that rehearsal period now. And that rehearsal period will turn into the real action one of these years. That's why this is so important. Did I answer that for you?
Yeah, Lou, you kind of blowed my mind there. Just trying to grasp everything you were saying, but that I never connected that valley of decision in Joel 3:14, where it says, multitudes, the valley of decision, for the day of Yahuah is near, in the valley of decision. That kind of blew my mind when you said that, because that trumpet starts with the dark moon, the full moon. As it goes to those 10 days of awe, then from what you're saying, I'm trying to get out of it is that this is the day that it leads to the day of Yahuah, where when it gets to Kafar and Kafar closes, it starts with a trump at the second coming of Messiah on the trumpets and the new moon. It goes to the 10 days of awe, and then it goes through Kafar, the day of atonement, where we fast and we afflict our being. And then at the end of that day, there's another trumpet that stops it all, that ends it, the 10 days of awe, right? So a trumpet starts it, a trumpet stops it, and nobody can be delivered after that. Then we go into 5 days of the tabernacle, where the new city perhaps comes down and Yahuah tabernacles with humanity through the millennium reign and even on into eternity. Am I getting what you're saying there?
That's what Yahuah has written down for us to understand, And he's written his words, his name down, more than any other word by far. And it was written so that the children of a future generation yet to be born will call on his name. Very good. Now, here's in several places he mentions why he's going to burn the earth. One of them is in Malachi chapter 4. One of them is in Yeshayahu 25. But we'll look at this Deuteronomy real quick. Deuteronomy 30, actually it's 29 right here. There's a reference to the end times. It's Deuteronomy 29, verse 24. And all nations shall say, why has Yahuah done so to this land, and what does the heat of this great displeasure mean? And it shall be said, because they have forsaken the covenant of Yahuah Elohim of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. And they went and served other mighty ones. They had rabbit's feet and pumpkins and Christmas trees. And these are the same people. I mean, they went wild with the idolatry. And they became nations. They interbred with them and so forth. And they learned their ways. And they went and served other mighty ones and bowed themselves to them, mighty ones that they did not know, and that he had not given to them. Therefore the displeasure of Yahuah burned against this land, and to bring on it every curse that is written in this book. And Yahuah uprooted them from their land in displeasure and in wrath and in great rage, and cast them into another land, as it is today. The secret things belong to Yahuah our Elohim. But what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. And now, Deuteronomy chapter 30 goes into greater detail about what these words are doing right now. They're coming upon us right now. And where are they coming on us? Well, where we are, scattered around the world. It says right here, chapter 30, verse 1, and it shall be when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the Gentiles where Yahuah your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahuah your Elohim and obey his voice, according to all that I command you today. See, we're talking about, he's saying from the beginning, he's talking about the end. And we're out here scattered. Now what happens? And we begin. And we obey them with all our heart, all your heart, and with all your being, you and your children. Then Yahuah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity. That proves that we're in captivity. That we're now in captivity in the last days. And shall have compassion on you. And he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yahuah your Elohim has scattered you. And if any of you are driven out to the farthest parts of the Shamayim, there might be some folks up there in spacesuits frozen to death. I don't know. But anyway, the fact is, whatever distance that you are living right now, and if you're turning your foot back to obedience, then he's going to gather you. And if any of you are driven out to the farthest parts unto the Shamayim, from there Yahuah your Elohim does gather you, and from there he does take you. He's going to snatch us in an instant and bring us back to the land, but it's going to be after we're changed. He's not talking. This is the big Exodus. This is the last time he's going to bring us back, and it's not like, oh yeah, you can go back to the land now. No, this is big. This is a big one. And he shall do good to you and increase you more than your fathers. And Yahuah your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, so that you might live. And Yahuah your Elohim shall put all these curses on your enemies and on those who hate you, who persecuted you. And you shall turn back and obey the voice of Yahuah, and do all his commands which I command you today. Yeah, it's kind of a double-folded thing, because this is actually a prediction or a prophecy of what he did when he regathered them to the land as recently as 1948, when he brought them back. But the big Exodus is ahead of us. I believe Jeremiah 3 talks about it too. If anybody wants to look that up and read it, it says, if you turn back to Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart, for this command which I am commanding you today, it is not too hard for you, nor is it far off. What you need is the perspective of Yahushua living in you. That's the secret, and you will want to obey. And you're the one that's standing in the way until you get his spirit. The commandments themselves, you could do any of them, and he would, appreciate that. But until you do obey him, you will not receive his spirit, so you need to start doing it. And so you want to obey his commandments. And anyway, that was important, I think. Obedience is kind of the key to the whole thing. I mean, then you get his spirit in you, and then you love them. He circumcises your heart with a love for the truth. And that's remarkable. So let's see, we were talking about Yom Teruah primarily there, the first day of the 7th month, and the 10 days of awe, or the, the people that are in distress that Yahushua describes in Matthew 24 is, they're starting to hear about the fire that's coming, and the messengers are going to be released to burn the earth. And they're not going to be kidding around. The prophet Yahuah talks about these people being released upon the earth too, on Yom Kafar, the day of the covering. You're either covered or you're not. You're wearing the armor of Yahushua himself, or you're vulnerable. Because if you're not wearing his armor, that would be him, then you're in deep trouble, because these creatures are going to take you out. Where the dead body is, that's where the vultures will gather. Does anybody have any comments on what we've covered so far?
I do. Unless anybody else does. I got to mute you so we don't have echoes, brother. Lou, as I'm listening to you, it's like Yahusha's opening up my mind to this spiritual insights along the way. And I just kind of, when you're on Deuteronomy 30, where it says, Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yahuah your Elohim has scattered you. And if any are driven out to the farthest parts under the Shemayim, from there Yahuah your Elohim does gather you, and from there he does take you. Spiritually, what came to my mind was, and I have a question here, I'm leading up to the question, was that we're all put on this carbon planet. And it's like a prison planet, and our fleshly bodies are like cells. And so we're in captivity, and we're all sentenced to death. We're all criminals sitting in these cells, sentenced to death on this death planet, if you will. And he's going to gather his people that he's put here and scattered about back to himself. And so what brings this to mind, here's the question, is that since he's going to burn everything up, there must be an end to his creation. There's a beginning and an end, as you mentioned. So we know the beginning because Yahuah declared the end from the beginning. And now we're getting closer to the end because he's going to burn everything up and destroy his creation, which he only allowed to exist for 7,000 years or 7 millenniums. And then he's going to take us into reality, to where we should have been, and maybe we were at the beginning before he created. So my question to you is, does this not look like a prison sentence that we're living out, and those that are going to be delivered or let loose from the prison to be with him for eternity? We're going to go into the reality of it all, and this whole life of ours is just nothing but a shadow? I mean, are you seeing that?
I understand that. And that understanding that you've been given there is, I understand. I had never considered that, but that's certainly applicable. Not that we would press in a divination way to perceive what he's thinking about doing, but we're perceiving it more and more as the time grows short, that we're going to be okay. That's the main thing, because when we have the sight of the devastation that's ahead, it's going to be upsetting. But we know that these are shells, and everything you see around you is dust. It's not of substance. It seems to be, but it doesn't have any value in it. What he's coming back to the earth to be with us for is because we're his bride. His bride is his inheritance, and he is our inheritance. And we're going to inherit everything he owns with him, and he's sharing it with us. but we'll know more about that, when the time comes. But he's just giving us a small taste of, I think, when your spiritual perception just got triggered. I think it's something that we have a great deal to look forward to. For eye has not seen, what ear heard, what Yahuah has prepared for those who love him. And love is evidence of evidence by obedience. He's not looking to put eternal, immortal bodies on disobedient beings. He's already got enough of those already. 1/3 of the Malachim, they've got they're immortal beings right now until he destroys them. But yeah, we're going to be receiving that, and it's something to look forward to.
Brother Lew,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Diane. You mentioned a scripture, I believe, in Yeshayahu. What chapter and verse?
Let's look that up, because that's pretty... Okay, we'll go past Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu 3 has an interesting thing in it, too. But Yirmiyahu 3 has a very interesting thing we need to look at if we have time. But Yeshayahu, let me find it. Chapter 25. And I can find that for you. Let's see. I didn't have a bookmark on it, but it actually mirrors some of the things from 24. Because Yeshayahu, or Isaiah 24 and 25 reveal incredible things. Get this. Okay, there's 28. We're getting there. All right. You should read chapter 24 too. I mean, it's talking about the same thing Yahushua's describing. Okay, they broke the everlasting covenant. Well, this is not the... I was thinking of Yeshayahu 24. That's where I was misleading you. I'm sorry. But it does have some interesting things, because it's saying something that we will be saying when we see him coming. And this is very important. When we see him coming, it may be on the first day of... well, it's going to happen in the 7th month. Let's say that much. He's going to wipe away all tears from all faces and take away the reproach of his people from all the earth, all the Eretz. For Yahuah has spoken. And what we did was we were picking up around verse 8 in chapter 25. And for Yahuah has spoken. And it shall be said in that yom, in that day, see, this is our Elohim. We have waited for him, and he saves us. This is Yahuah. We have waited for him. Let us be glad and rejoice in his deliverance. See, we only have one deliverer. It's Yahuah. And in chapter 24, which I should have referenced, I was doing that from memory, but it says, it starts out right there, Yeshayahu, or Isaiah 24, see, Yahuah is making the Eretz, the earth, empty, and making it waste, and shall overturn its surface, and shall scatter abroad its inhabitants. And it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, and as with the servant, so with his master, as with the female servant, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The Eretz is completely emptied and utterly plundered, for Yahuah has spoken this word. And the Eretz shall mourn and wither, the world shall languish and wither. And this is going to happen in the 7th month. This is becoming more and more evident. And for the Eretz has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the Teruah, changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant. And he's got the everlasting covenant written in stone, but he's put it in our minds now, because we love the commandments. Therefore a curse shall consume the Eretz, and those who dwell in it be punished. Therefore the inhabitants of the Eretz shall be burned, and few men left in it shall be left in it. The new wine will fail, and the vine shall languish, and those glad at heart shall sigh. Well, that was what I really meant to refer to, because this is obviously a 7th month thing that's unfulfilled, because the Eretz has not been burned entirely, and the inhabitants have not received their due punishment yet. But we're just as guilty. We just have to repent, and that's why the multitudes that are in the valley of decision have to decide and do it quickly. How long will you waver between two opinions? Either Yahuah is Elohim or not, and serve him if he is. And I don't know why they can't get that out of their heads. I want to share something real quick, though, if you don't mind. I heard a person claiming that the name is not important, but that's the name we call on when we're being immersed. We've got to get his name as correct as we can and not condemn anybody for being different. But and if we can get to that point, be immersed, call on him for forgiveness of our sins and our crimes, and turn and obey him, and he will send his spirit into you in order for you to obey. And he will guide you, and that's what he's called, the counselor or the helper. He comes up alongside and helps us, and we understand a whole lot better. But I'm sorry I misled you on that chapter. It was really 24. Any other questions that people might have up to this point about Yom Kafar?
Yes, Brother Lew, I believe Brother Mark has a question.
Brother Mark?
Yeah, I do. So this is getting into
You're very garbled, Brother Mark.
still. Go ahead and go then.
From now where we're at in the year 2022. Now, another place to look about this day, Yom Kafar, is mentioned in Acts chapter 2. It's also mentioned in Acts 17. Paul is talking to about 400 nobles at the Areopagus, and they have the power of life and death over him. And he'd been spreading rumors about somebody that had been raised from the dead, and they pulled him out of there. They went him in there and explain yourself, and he did a really good job. If you read Acts chapter 17, and he mentioned something about a day that is set, and it's going to be a day that is going to be where all mankind and everybody is going to be judged according to their activities, and the judge is going to be a man, the man that was raised from the dead. And so some believed him, and that was good. So they took him aside and wanted to hear more. So let's see. This is a quote from Yeshayahu 66, and that happens to be the last chapter written by Yeshayahu. For look, Yahuah comes with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his displeasure with burning, and his rebuke with flames of fire. So there's no mistake, that's literal. For by fire and by his sword, Yahuah shall judge all flesh. Now, if Yahuah is going to judge all flesh, and the man that he's appointed is going to judge all flesh, then who would that be? Well, it's going to be Yahusha. That's his name. He's our deliverer. Now it says, for the slain of Yahuah shall be many, those who set themselves apart and cleanse themselves in the gardens, that would be farms, that following after one in the middle, or the midst, eating the flesh of pigs, and the abomination and the mouse, they're snatched away together, declares Yahuah. And it shall be from new moon to new moon, and from Shabbat to Shabbat, all flesh shall come to worship before me, and they shall go forth and look on the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, and their fire not be quenched, and they shall be repulsive to all flesh. Well, we need to eat clean animals. That's what that's telling us too. Not just that, but the reapers that we hear about in Joel chapter 2 and 3 are absolutely terrifying. Let's see. This is a quote from 2 Peter describing this very day that we're about to rehearse, the 10th day of the 7th month. This is a frightening day. This is Peter text. 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 through 18. This is now, beloved ones, the second letter I write to you, in which I stir up your sincere mind to remember the words previously spoken by the set-apart prophets. Oh, he must not think that they're thrown away. Yeah, he must believe them. He wants us to remember them. And of the command of the Master and Deliverer, spoken by your emissaries, knowing this first, that mockers shall come in the last yomim, or days, with mocking, walking according to their own lusts, and saying, where's the promise of his coming? For since the fathers have fell asleep, all continues as from the beginning of creation. For they choose to have this hidden from them, that the Shamayim were of old, and the Arets, standing out of water and in the water, by the word of Elohim, through which the world at that time was destroyed by water, being flooded with water. And the present Shamayim and the Arets are treasured up by the same word, being kept for fire, to a yom, a day of judgment. Now that's referred to by, I just referred to Paul talking about this in Acts chapter 17. A day of judgment. There is a day set for judgment. Judgment Day is why the people will be in the valley of decision. They're going to be going, oh boy, something's happening now. And now it says, and destruction of wicked men. But beloved ones, let not this one thing be hidden from you, that with Yahuah 1 yom is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as 1 yom. Yahuah is not slow in regard to the promise, as some count slowness, but is patient towards us, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Now that repentance would involve turning away from crimes and obeying his commandments and being immersed and asking for the forgiveness of your crimes. But the Yom of Yahuah, that's the day of Yahuah, and he's mentioning this right here, shall come as a thief in the lilah, a thief in the night. in which the Shamayim shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with intense heat, and the arets and the works that are in it, everything that men have built, shall be burned up. Seeing all that these are to be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be in set-apart behavior and reverence, looking for and hastening the coming of the Yom of Elohim, through which the Shamayim shall be destroyed? That would be the skies that we call the air, the atmosphere. It's going to be ripped away. And being set on fire. And the elements melt with intense heat. But according to his promise, we wait for a renewed Shamayim and a renewed Eretz, in which uprightness dwells. So this, all this is going to be turned to ash, and he's going to renew it. So then, beloved ones, looking forward to this, do your utmost to be found by him in peace, spotless and blameless, and reckon the patience of our Master as deliverance. So also, as also our beloved brother Paul wrote to you according to the wisdom given to him, as also in all his letters, speaking in them concerning these matters, in which some are hard to understand, which those who are untaught and unstable twist to their own destruction, as they do also to the other scriptures. You then, beloved ones, being forewarned, watch, lest you also fall from your own steadfastness, being led away with the delusion of the lawless, but grow in the favor and knowledge of our Master and Deliverer, Yahushua HaMashiach. To him be the esteem, both now and to a yom that abides. Amen. 2 Peter 3, verses 1 through 18. A day is set. Now, what would that day be? And what month would it be in? Wouldn't it be in the shadow pictures of redemption? The redemptive shadows tell us what to expect and observe. And when the reality comes around us in these last three, see, you've got 4 fulfilled, and now you've got the last 3, Yom Teruah, and Yom Kafar, and Sukkoth.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, sir. Yes, you're better now.
Oh, yeah. Hang on, Lou, before you get off that subject. I want to finish the question. Okay, so you've got me really intrigued here, because I think I know where you're going, but before you get there, I just need to ask you something. Okay, so the days of all right, is obviously the end game. It's the countdown to the day of Yahuah, and when he's going to fire everything up. So in the beginning, that on trumpets, we hear a trumpet blast. That starts the days of all, the second coming of Yahuah. It leads us through those 10 days of awe, which goes from darkness into light, just like in the days of creation. It starts with darkness and it increasingly heads into full light at the end, right? So the days of awe is the beginning from the end. And the end ends on Kafar. When Kafar ends and they blow the trumpet signaling the closing of the door or the closing of the gate on Kafar, it's all Shirot. No more deliverance. So that's why everybody has to, don't worry about eating, don't worry about drinking, don't worry about anything else on Yom Kafar except to get delivered. You need to be calling on the name of Yahuah to get delivered on Kafar, because when that day ends, the last trumpet sounds, nobody else can be delivered, and then immediately after that comes the day of Yahuah, and everything's going to be put on fire and burned up. That's the end of the game. Game over, man. That's the end of the 6,000-year period. We're done. Because once that trumpet starts, when Yahushua comes back at the second coming, he's coming back to the Mount of Olives with his Malachim, with his army, and with the first resurrection group together with his Malachim down the Mount of Olives, and he's gonna just grab the hold of the anti-Mashiach and false prophet and throw him in the lake of fire. So there's turmoil going on. So for 10 days, all this turmoil is happening. All these things are going on. It leads to the Kafar. The door closes, the day of Yahuah, everything's burned up. Then we go into the millennium reign, which is still fleshly, for 1,000 more years of peace under Yahusha, and then off into eternity, into our reality. I mean, this is what I'm getting out of all this right now. But hang on, Lil, I'm going to put your mic back on. I had a question, but I lost it.
All right. Well, you mentioned earlier that you realized that you'd read about 2 trumpets, one on the first day of the 7th month, and that's the warning. But then there's another one that happens, and that's mentioned regarding the release. On the 10th day of the 7th month is the Jubilee or the Yobel, and we've got that written in Leviticus 25, verses 9 and 10, and it goes like this. You shall sound a ram's horn to pass through on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, cause a ram's horn to pass through all your land, and you shall set the 50th year apart. I believe he's going to come back on the 50th year. And proclaim release throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It is a Yobel or Jubilee for you. And each of you shall return to his possession, and each of you return to his clan. That's remarkable. Yeah. So that day is big. And then we have the dead raised also on the day of Yahuah. It says at Yeshayahu 26 or Isaiah 26:19, on Yom Teruah. This is when this happens. Let your dead live, together with my dead body. Let them arise, awake, and sing. You who dwell in dust, for your dew is a dew of light. And that sounds like Daniel 12. And let the earth give birth to the departed spirits. On Yom Kafar again, in Yeshayahu 26, starting in verse 20, go, my people, enter your rooms, and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little while, until the displeasure is past. Reaping will transpire at that moment. And this is on the 10th day of the 7th month. For look, Yahuah is coming out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their crookedness, and the earth shall disclose her blood and no longer cover her slain. We're talking about the harvest of mankind, is what we're talking about. Revelation 14, starting at 15. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place, crying with a loud voice to the one sitting on the cloud, send your sickle and reap, because the hour has come for you to reap, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. And the one sitting on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place, which is in the heaven, and he too held a sharp sickle. And another messenger came out from the altar, having authority over the fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him having the sharp sickle, saying, send your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe. And the messenger thrust in his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth. He's talking about people. And threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of Elohim. That's terrifying. Yeah. Now here's a short description of what these reapers are going to be like. And they perform their terrifying work. The seraphim, which are the burning angels, are described by the prophet Yual or Joel. Quote, "They run like mighty men. They climb the wall like men of battle. Every one goes on his way, and they do not break ranks." That's Yael 2, Yual 2. Now, we're talking about gathering the weeds first. So the wrath is poured out on the weeds while the wheat is still standing there. And then they're reaped. The weeds go first, and then they're gathered and burned. But the wheat stands because they're inheriting the earth. And at that time, the messengers, probably the ones that were doing the reaping, are going to lift us up and take us. So don't argue with them when that moment comes. I don't know why, but we're suddenly becoming aware of what we can expect. So we see the bad stuff, and then we wait for the good stuff, because we're not being burned, obviously. 1,000 will fall at our side, like Psalm 91 says, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it doesn't come near your tent. And it's interesting, they use the word tent, but that refers to the tent of your body. But the Sukkoth you're in, the festival of Sukkoth, is a reference to a tent also. But it's the wedding tent that we're talking about. And that's another picture that we have to look forward to when we cover the festival of Sukkoth, which is 5 days later. So on the 15th, on the full moon of the 7th month, when the moon is full, the whole earth has the same moon. So when everybody anywhere on the planet looks up and sees the moon, whether it's daytime or nighttime, it's a full moon. And that tells you, hey, there it is. It's the 15th day of the 7th moon. So you can test that. A lot of people start with the crescent sighting, and they don't start from the 0. It's like starting a stopwatch on 1. If you go from 1 to 10, you only covered 9 seconds. But if you start at the right point, 0 light, and then you see the first day fully built on the beginning of the second day, that crescent is actually the beginning of the second day of the month. And that confirms it. And then you can say, okay, we were right, we had the right day. But they know, some know, but others are distracted by teachers and calendar makers and specialists. But you can test it every time. For the first 3 years, back in the mid-'80s, when I started observing the festivals, I was seeing these tracks coming out of various teaching ministries, and they were showing you this crescent moon. And I didn't see the word crescent anywhere in the scriptures. But they were showing you this crescent, and they were saying, this is a new moon. And I'm not making fun of them, but they really sincerely believe that. And I was looking at the full moon on the 15th, 15 days later, and it was already starting to shrink. It was the 16th, really. But I was calling it the 15th because I started at the wrong starting point. Just like starting at 1 on a stopwatch to get to 10. You just don't do that. But the logic of it will strike you when you understand and live the commandments. When you live any commandment, you learn from the commandment. It teaches you from inside it, and then you internalize it. But when you listen to men, there's something a little bit off every time. Don't listen to me. Look at Scripture. That's your calendar. It's not some person that lived before the flood that sets the things. It's you don't know what words they were writing, but he was writing Hebrew, the fellow I'm talking about, and I respect him as a prophet. But who translated it, and how many translations did it have subsequently? And if all they've got is Aramaic, well, it's not what he was writing, because Aramaic didn't exist. That's another trick that people easily see once they wake up to it. The judgment of all flesh. Yeah. He's going to judge people that eat pigs and unclean animals and don't listen to his commandments. And that's what we have to purge from our minds. These people that say, "Oh, it's okay. You can call him whatever you want." Well, why is that one word, his name, the only problem word? That's what, and it's used more than any other. I don't know. I mean, you can say shalom. You can say any other Hebrew word that comes to mind. But you start talking about the name, and they go, "Oh, it doesn't really matter what words you use. Those are just ideas." Well, they're words, and they're written down so that someone that's yet to be born will be able to call on it, and recognize the letters. That's why they're written. But there is a day set, so that's Yom Kafar. Is there any other discussion about that? Does anybody have any concerns or whatever? I don't have all the answers, but I'll certainly delve into it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On Kafar, which we're supposed to inflict our being, it's a fast. It's the only day I know of really that we're commanded to fast or afflict our being is a command by Yahuah. The rest of them are voluntary fasts. I'm just wondering, would you recommend to the Natsarim that they don't eat or drink on this very important day? A total fast?
The 9th day at evening in the 7th month to the 9th day at evening in the 10th day. So it's one day that you just don't eat anything. Yeah.
And how about drinking? Do you think they should?
Well, that's another matter. The water, if you're ill, maybe about 2 to 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, before the end of the Yom Kafar. If you're desperate and you're faint, that means you've got toxins being released, and purging by a little water. That's not, I don't think, breaking the fast, but certainly drinking something that's pleasant would be wrong. Yeah, but water is water. But when Yahushua was fasting, I don't remember it mentioning water. I do remember it. He was fasting from food. Do you know if that's true?
I can't really pinpoint it, but I do think that he was probably not drinking or eating. That he was out in the middle of the desert would be my guess, or even at the fast. I mean, that's what I do. I think if you're capable, you should go. Do not eat or drink. If you're not, because of some kind of a physical ailment, like Lew suggested, then you should probably drink. You don't want to die. Yahuah doesn't want you to die. I even sometimes it even seems like we should take it a little bit farther and just deny ourselves of anything that brings pleasure to us. Like if you really like to watch a football game or TV or sew or cook, I mean, anything that you really take pleasure in probably should be avoided on that day, because think about it. It's the last day that we could be delivered. When the year that all this happens, that's the end of the game. That's the last day. That's the end of the age. When that day's over and that trumpet blows signifying the fast is over, you can't be delivered anymore. So you should put everything away, everything out of mind, and concentrate strictly and solely on Yahuah. That's what I have been led to believe on that. Kafar is extremely important.
It sure is, and these are shadows, kind of a rehearsing the event, and there are aged people. I mean, if they're up in their 80s and they're dying of thirst, and they're getting ill to the point of headaches and serious pains. I don't think you meant for us to get headaches, but you can afflict yourself with a headache if you want. But I'll tell you what, the year that we know is the real year you don't have to worry about headaches. You just don't eat or drink, you know. Well, even if you're sick, I guess, you know, I would think, you know. But these are shadows, and he's redeeming us. We're not redeeming ourselves. But we're going to be paying so close attention to him. And who knows, he might shorten the time just a bit during that day for the elect. And because the elect are obeying him. And they won't need anything to eat or drink. That would be lovely. Because he's compassionate. I think his kindness is everlasting. It's just impossible to outgive him. But if we're done with Yom Kafar for now, we can move into Sukkoth and discuss a little bit about that.
Could I just get one thing here real quick, Lou?
Yeah.
Lucas, Yahuah on here. I am very happy to finally see you, brother. You've been on this channel, you've been on Lou's channel for a long, long time. This is the first time I've ever saw your face. I love you, man. Thanks for coming on every week, brother. And it's really, really nice to finally get to see you. I just wanted to say that. On here. I'm very happy to finally see you, brother. You've been on. I think Diane had her hand up, Lou. Diane?
Yes. Brother Lew, if a person is taking medications and you need to drink water to take the medication, so would that be acceptable?
I think most of the people that are in the medical field would agree that it would be suitable for you to take a minimal amount of water on that day, yes, with your medication. And because if you don't take your medication, and certain medications are very critical, they can throw you into imbalance. And I'm sorry that people have to do those things, but they do. I have more compassion and understanding myself for people that have to take steps to keep their body, you know, balanced. Before I experienced the illnesses that my wife has been enduring, I probably inside didn't really think that it was necessary as much as doctors think, but I really do respect the medical field. I'm not happy that our bodies need these things, but you know, they can also cause problems. But yes, I think water is appropriate. I don't think water tastes that great, but it does to me. But water.
Okay, I think Tad had a question, Lou. Tad? No?
No, I just had my hand up so Diane, Sister Diane wouldn't get skipped over. Thank you, though.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tad. And that's nice for you to be watching out for the Natsarim, brother.
Not a problem.
Just doing my job.
Thank you, Tad.
All right. So now let's consider some of the aspects that we read about in Sukkoth. That's a remembrance of dwelling in tents. And we'll pick that up at Leviticus 23. Let's see. We've covered the Yom Kippur. Now, he spends a lot of time on that Yom Kippur, you know, the 10th day. And that's from the 9th day at evening, the 10th day at evening. Now it says here, in Leviticus 23, starting at verse 33, and Yahuah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, on the 15th Yom, or day, of this 7th month, is the festival of Sukkoth, for 7 Yomim to Yahuah. And on the first Yom is set apart Mikra, you do no servile work. For 7 Yomim you bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. On the 8th Yom, there shall be a set-apart mikra for you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. Now that's when the offerings made by fire are foods that people are celebrating with. And in the book of Nehemiah or Nehemiah chapter 8 and 9, we read about that. But that's the priesthood that was in effect then. That was the what they call the Old Covenant, where animal blood was involved in the atoning for sins temporarily. But for 7 Yom, you bring this, they had to bring in an offering made by fire. Now, here in the captivity, as we were in Babel, where Daniel and the house of Yehuda was taken captive, we've got no example of them doing anything like this. They didn't have offerings made by fire. They were relying on obeying commandments, but they weren't doing these annual things. And I'm not even remembering any mention of the weekly Sabbath either, but that surely can't be, because Daniel was a very, very dedicated person, and I can't imagine them working. But that's for another discussion. Now the 8th day, it's a closing festival, and you do no servile work. Wait a minute. No, this is the 7th day. The 7th day of the festival is the closing, and you do no servile work. And these are the appointed times of Yahuah, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah, to a burnt offering and a grain offering. Now, besides, let's see, on the 15th, he's repeating it. It says on the 15th Yom, or day of the 7th moon, when you gather in the fruit of the land, observe the festival of Yahuah for 7 Yomim. 7. So the first day is a rest, and the 7th day is a rest. On the 1st Yom is a rest, and on the 8th Yom is a rest. Right? I just said 7th. No, it's 8th. That's what it is. But it's for 7 days, and then the 8th day is the closing festival. That's what it is. Okay. See, I've been doing this for decades, and I'm still having to review it. I always do. And you all should too. On the 1st Yom is a rest.
Hey, Lou.
What's this?
I say the reason that is because we only do it once a year. So we go through the whole year and we kind of forget, and we have to remind ourselves every year what's going on. I think we all do that.
Nobody's perfect but Yahuah. All right.
Lou, Ted's got a question. Oh, why you keep raising your hand? So we go through the whole year and we kind of forget, we have to
Questions?
Go ahead. No, Ted had his hand up, but he doesn't want to ask anything. So go ahead.
Okay, here we go. All right. So we dwell in booths for the remembrance of the time that we were in the wilderness dwelling in booths. But it's also a forward-looking festival to where we will be taken into the booth of Yahuah, and we will be with him forever, because he's going to be in us, actually. Physically, we might be in other places, but he's going to be with us, so it's as if we never depart from him, and he loves us that much, Okay, well, that's about all it says in there, but there's a lot of insight that comes with dwelling in booths. You put willows and leafy trees and little decorations made of fruit and just hang them around inside this tent that you make temporarily. It's a temporary shelter, and it's kind of like it's a booth, a tent, a sukkah, and it represents the household that's living in the tent for those days. We go into it at least once a day and sit and have a meal. And sometimes when we were younger, we would sleep in the tent, and some people still do. But we dwell in the tent. We dwell in this artificial booth. And we decorate it with fronds of, we really like willows, and we've got some willows. So we put willows, benches up there, and all these fresh leafy things are all over this thing, and they're sheltering you from the hot sun. And what happens over the period of that week? These leaves dry up slightly every day, and by the end of the week, they're starting to fall off. And that's kind of making the booth and the leaves that are representing life on the branches become dead, because our bodies are aging and changing, and we look different, and those leaves start looking different too. So it's kind of a reflection of our body, because we see throughout Scripture people are always prophets and teachers are referencing the body of their tent, the tent of their body. And so the tent is changing, and we are appointed once to die, so that should get our attention. And if we are healthy and we are blessed, we'll live 70 years. And if we're super blessed, we might live 80 or more. It's a matter of Yahuah's decision. I'm 72 and a half. Moving on. One day I won't be here, and you won't be able to see me. But anyway, Yahushua is here. He's dwelling in our living bodies, those that have repented, immersed, and been immersed by Him and dwelled by Him because they obey Him. You can't expect Him to help you, and certainly He does not want to hear any prayers out of you if you're not obedient. Because what is it, Proverbs 28 verse 9? It says, he who turns his ear away from the Teruah, even his prayer is an abomination to Him. And you see a lot of people praying and begging and asking Him to do their will. Well, we're not here to get Him to do our will. We're here to do His will, and that is to serve Him and obey His commandments and look to Him for all our needs, yes. And He says you do not have because you do not ask. So whatever you need according to His will, then you ask Him and He will give it to you. Maybe not right away, but maybe He doesn't want you to have it yet. But wait for Him, be patient, and keep asking. Don't stop. But don't ask Him to do your will. Say, hey, I have a need. My body hurts. Paul was praying to have a thorn removed from his flesh. We assume that might be eyesight or poor eyesight, or possibly an illness, a pain of some sort. He was stoned 3 times, so he has some ouches. I'm prepared for any questions that anyone might have.
I have a question if nobody else does. Let's say this.
Oh, yes, Mark, go ahead.
The 8th day is so we Natsarim understand it that Yahushua's birthday was on the first day of Sukkoth, right? So that's when Yahushua was born. He wasn't born on December 25th. He was born on the first day of Sukkoth, which means by strict Torah instructions, a male child had to be circumcised on the 8th day. And so, to my understanding spiritually, is that the removal of the flesh of that circumcision is really symbolic for us removing our flesh and getting our immortal bodies on the 8th day. And that's why we're not supposed to dwell in booths on the 8th day, because we're not supposed to stay in these fleshly bodies, to put them off, and we're now in immortal bodies. Can you expand on that at all, Lou?
I had never actually made that connection. I was along with you up to the point where he was born on the first day of Sukkoth, and he tented among men. Of course, he was 2 years old when the Magi came, but he was living in a house. But the 8th day, when he was circumcised and presented in the temple, that makes great sense. And the spiritual meaning behind that would have to be, at least including the putting off of the flesh and not dwelling in booths anymore, because we're going to be having an immortal body, not the flesh. Very interesting. You illuminated that perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. And so now, elaborate on that. I got to mute you because of the echo. So to elaborate on that now, as we go down through Leviticus 23, we get in verse 33, and 34, and 35, and 36, and even on down to 36. 37. I mean, we get an explanation of booths or tents, and then he kind of gets off track there just a little bit. And then next thing we know, on verse 39, it starts with a greater detail for tabernacles, and it starts back up there again. And then notice that it says grain offerings, do a burnt offering, do a drink offering, a grain offering, slaughter offering, and even to do an offering made by fire to Yahuah. Now, I kind of get the tabernacles is everlasting, and we're going to even be doing that in the millennium reign. I get that. I get that some of that is pertaining to the oath priesthood. But my question is the offering by fire, to bring an offering by fire, could this be alluding to bringing him more fruit that has received the Ruach HaKodesh, been immersed with fire from above? Bring that type of fruit with you to the ceremony or the observant, because this Tabernacles is one of the three pilgrimages, the feast of three that are defined for us in Deuteronomy 16. Details the three pilgrimage feasts. Do you think that could have something to do with bringing somebody that's been received the fire of the Ruach HaKodesh down upon them? Is the fire offering now, and the other ones, the drink offerings and all them other offerings? I'm thinking, I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. That those have been obsolete. They're no longer needed in this observation.
I agree that the offerings that are described here for the priesthood are something that, that's ended, unnecessary. There's no mishkan. But then when he brings us back, like you said, in the future, during the millennium, for example, and beyond, we can see that there would be it's sad that they have to reinitiate it, because I ask Christian pastors all the time, why are we not doing this? Because we're going to start doing it when he comes back, and they just have this pet answer. Well, there's an interruption in that, but they don't understand what they're saying, because they're following doctrinal replacement theology and things like that. But as far as the fire symbolism, that would make sense also. The fire of your heart, maybe, because you're not cold, and you're not lukewarm, but you're on fire because of the heat that you have, the love is like a burning fire. And Yirmiyahu talks about that. His name becomes like a burning fire in his bones, and he can't hold it back. And that's described as a fire. I liked it. So your analogy is, I think, very proper.
Thank you, Lou.
You're welcome.
Ted, you got a question for Lou? Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have a question this time. Can you elaborate, Brother Lou, on the 8th day? As far as my understanding about that day, it has spiritual connotations that say it's like a new beginning. Isn't that, because he's going to, after the earth is, renewed, he's then going to dwell with us on that 8th day? Isn't that like that the very beginning of that time?
Well, that is certainly a possibility, and what Brother Mark was talking about as a reference to the circumcision being no longer dwelling in tents for those first 7 days of Sukkoth, and then the 8th day being like a new body. He's got a new body now, and he was circumcised on the 8th day. The actual circumcision being obeyed, I think, will have more ramifications and revelations of what the spiritual meaning is behind that, because we know that the flesh is unable to please him, but the obedient ones that obey from the heart are very pleasing to him. And even if they just do something and they don't quite understand it, like we're talking about this right now. We don't completely understand it, but we're going to do it anyway, and hope that by doing it, that we'll learn from inside of the obedience what that might be. But I know that the years that I have been observing Sukkoth and all the other festivals, I've learned a great deal from the spiritual dimension inside those commandments, and I saw the uselessness of the flesh. But we're not earning anything. What we're doing is practicing, and it's a matter of doing it as a shadow, because it's a shadow of what's coming, and his fulfillment of the first 4 we've seen the object that was casting the shadow. We know that he's the Passover. We know that he's first fruits. He's resurrected, and we see matzah as purging out the dross of men's teachings and having a new wineskin and putting in the pure wine and having pure teachings and only Scripture, not these other ideas that are floating around in the world. And then Pentecost, or Shavuot, this 50th day after the 7th Sabbath, is also a picture. It's been all fulfilled, though. But these 7th month observances in these appointed times, they're wide open. We just have to say, let's not predict too much. Let's just watch and learn. When we see it, then he's going to quicken our minds, and we're going to say, that's it. And it's going to make a whole lot more sense. He's got so much more to teach us. When I first started, I saw these commandments that were annual, and I saw it like on another level. And I wanted to know what they represented. I knew there must be some symbolism here that's being then I discovered that he was the object of them all. He's doing them, and that's the key to this. It's what we do is just simple little things. We have a meal, we take off from work. But in doing those things, he will obey him. And then he lets you see other things and treasures that have depth in them. They're like special little gifts that he opens your mind with. And it's just very important that people pay attention to them. And although we're in captivity and we can't go to Jerusalem, we shouldn't. Because if you go there, Ezekiel 37, I think it is, it talks about people that are in Yehuda in the last days, on the day of Yahuah. They're going to be eaten by birds. They're not even supposed to be there. The blood's going to flow in the streets. You don't want to be there, but he will bring you there. He said, and we read it, wherever you are, under Shamayim, wherever I have scattered you, from there you will hear my voice, these words will come upon you, you will obey my voice, and I will gather you. Now, he's not going to be able to gather you if you're already there. You know what I mean? Does anybody have a comment about that?
No, but Diane's got a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Brother Lew, I was searching for the scripture, but I can't locate it. Where it's in the Tanakh, where it says during Yahushua's reign, when he comes back, that the people will come up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Booths, the Feast of Tabernacles, and whoever does not come up, their land would have a lack of water and a lack of food. I just can't remember the book, but it's at the end of that. Oh, I can't. I was looking for it, but I can't find it.
Zechariah 14. Yeah, and I'll read it to you if you like. It's very, very good. And I pointed this out to some Christian pastors too, and they just ignore it. That was what I was talking about when I said that we're going to be doing it. It says in Zechariah 14, okay, he talks about all these plagues, and their eyes will decay in their sockets, and their tongues decay in their mouths. And it shall be in that yom, this is the day of Yahuah, obviously, that a great confusion from Yahuah is among them, and every one of them shall seize the hand of his neighbor, and his hand rise up against his neighbor's hand. And Yehudah shall fight at Jerusalem as well. So we know why they're there. They're there because this prophecy is there. And the wealth, no, it says, and the wealth of all the nations round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and garments in great quantities. So also is the plague on the horse and on the mule, on the camel and the donkey. It sounds like the plagues of Egypt, doesn't it? Only on a bigger scale. And on all the cattle that are in those camps as this plague. And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations, and this is what you're talking about, I think, which came up against Jerusalem, shall go up year to year to bow themselves to the sovereign Yahuah Sabaoth. That means the sovereign Yahuah of armies. And to observe the festival of Sukkoth. So it's once again going to be in the millennium. And it shall be that if any one of the clans of the Eretz does not come up to Jerusalem to bow himself to the sovereign Yahuah Sabaoth, on them there is to be no rain. And if the clan of Mitzrayim does not come up and enter in, then there is no rain. On them is the plague with which Yahuah plagues the nations, who do not come up to observe the festival of Sukkoth. And that begins on the 15th day of the 7th month. And this is the punishment of Mitzrayim and the punishment of all the nations that do not come up to observe the festival of Sukkoth. In that Yom, in that day, Kodesh Yahuah, set apart to Yahuah, shall be engraved on the bells of the horses, and on the pots in the house of Yahuah shall be like the bowls before the altar. And every pot in Jerusalem and Yehudah shall be set apart to Yahuah Sabaoth. It's interesting because that phrase, Kodesh Yahuah, set apart to Yahuah, was what was written, engraved on the golden headpiece that was worn by the high priest. And he himself was set apart to Yahuah, and that was just a mark that he held on his forehead when he was in the temple doing his job. And that headpiece was seen by a person that was in the first century. He said, I saw the golden headpiece, and it was written in Hebrew. The name was written in Hebrew vowels. Hebrew, not Aramaic, not Aramith, but Hebrew. And of course that would make sense because when the thing was fabricated, they had just left Egypt, in the Exodus. And this golden headpiece that said Kodesh Yahuah, that means set apart to Yahuah, was fabricated in the wilderness, probably made from gold that was absconded from the Egyptians themselves. So they had all this gold. They made a calf out of it too. They had to grind that up and eat and drink it. But this particular golden headpiece, they call him Josephus. He lived in the first century. He was an historian, and he claims to be a follower of Yahusha. And he wrote volumes of books. He's got this one called, I think it's called the something of the Yahudim, Book 3. The Chronicles or the... it's just, it was in Hebrew, obviously. But he was writing this book for us to read today so that we'd see that this golden headpiece still existed in the first century, the original one, which was phenomenal. And his name is, they call him Josephus, but his real name is Yusuf ben Matithyahu. Joseph is what they call him. Josephus. Yusuf ben Matithyahu. So he is an eyewitness and saw the golden headpiece. And being literate, obviously writing volumes of books, I've got some of his books over here. They call him Josephus. And it's just amazing that golden headpiece would be saying the same thing that we're reading of here, that are Kodesh Yahuah, that's going to be written on the bells of the horses and on the pots in the city. It's amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. A lot of times you'll see pictures of this golden headpiece on the internet. It's not the real thing, though. But it's pictures people have fabricated, and they write it in Aramaic, which is totally impossible because they didn't go to Babel. From the mid-1400 BC to, the time of captivity, it was just under 1,000 years. So they weren't in Babel to pick up that script. Why would they be writing Aramaic in the wilderness? That's another issue. Any other questions on this Sukkoth?
I got one.
Yes, Mark?
Right there at the end of that, where you were reading, where it says that, and there shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of Yahuah Zaboeth in that Yom. This can't be pointing to Canaanite race of people or anything, because they're no longer on the earth. Do you think this is speaking of possibly evildoers or something, or people that worship Satan or something? What do you think that's meaning? I mean, the Canaanites are no longer with us. in this present day has to be a figurative of something. What do you think that means?
I agree. I think that there's symbolism in this more so than literal, because the idea that, yeah, evil is just not going to be there. Canaanites, if you look at it on the level of figurative speaking, then it's obviously not a race or a people, because flesh and blood does not inherit the kingdom. You know, we're looking forward to a new creation, but the flesh, actually, there's not an evil race out there. People are teaching that stuff, and I see this as an error, because anybody can repent from any race or any line of blood, because we're all created from one blood. And this idea of somebody that had a father that was a sinner, therefore the son is going to be a sinner too, that's not necessarily the case, because he calls who he calls. And I respect my parents with every fiber in my being, but I know that they had a lot more to learn, and they, you know, we hope that they make it. We have maybe there's a second chance. I don't know, but they don't know, and they didn't receive a lot of the things that I was showing them in Scripture. They were more concerned with traditions, but that's not their fault. It's no one's fault. It's just that they don't have time to study, and the teachers are out there throwing gasoline on the fire, so to speak, because they're going, yeah, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, we're going to be doing what they want you to do. See, 2 Timothy chapter 2, isn't it? Talks about the heaping up of teachers who teach what their itching ears want to hear. And they have EASTER banners up, and eggs and bunnies, and they're going to have an egg hunt for the children. See, these things that we're teaching children in the Christian organization are abominations, and they're misleading children, and then they grow into adults and they teach their children, and they say, oh, this is fun. You're denying them the fun that they deserve. Well, I had that criticism when I was raising my two boys, and my relatives were thinking that I was depriving them, but I was kind about it. I just said, well, I just do what's written here, and traditions are becoming dirtier looking to me every day because they're fertility. They didn't see the fertility. It's masked. It's disguised. And the masquerading messengers of light, they're masquerading, are out there misleading literally millions. They're not telling them about these festivals. They're not telling them that the Sabbath is intact. Yahuah himself, in Matthew chapter 24, verse 20, says, "Pray that your flight not be in the distress. Pray in the last days." That's what the whole chapter is about. The last days, because his Natsarim came to him and said, "Tell us about the signs of your coming." And he said, in the last days, pray that your flight is not in winter or on a Shabbat. That would include rest days like Yom Kafar or the weekly Shabbat, But how can they read that and then say, oh, I don't know. It's just, it's nonsensical. It's like they're not able to think. And I think it's because their minds are darkened. And it's hard to penetrate somebody's mind. It's easy to fool someone. And I'm quoting Mark Twain here, whose name is not Mark Twain. He's lying about that too. But he did say that it's easy to fool someone, but it's very difficult to convince them that they've been fooled. So that's what we're facing, and we have to be patient. That's the main thing. Any other questions?
Sandra got one for you, Luke.
Okay, Sandra.
Okay, I think I read. Remember when he was talking to his Talmudim, and he was expounding to them about what the parables meant, and he also said that I think it was like the Prussian had come against him, and because they were jealous because he had done some miracles and things. However, he was saying that it's not given to them to see, because that if they were to see something to that effect, that if they were to see, they could get delivered, or and then I think it's in Yahuah that until like until the Father opened their eyes, they really cannot see, right?
He was quoting the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah, word for word in his language right there, and explaining to them that, their minds were darkened and they were blinded by their traditions mainly. And that's what stands in the way of everybody that we talk to that's not awake. Because, see, they're dreaming, they're sleeping, and they're happy and content with the festivals and the traditions of fertility that they embrace. And they're guided in that from childhood. What was it? I think Inigo Loyola said, give me a child from birth to age 7, and I will show you the man. So in other words, they'll continue in what they were taught as children. And there was another wise man that lived in the 1200s named Maimonides, the Rambam. He said that it's the difficulty people have getting to truth is that they were taught things in their youth, and they hold those fast. They love those things more so than the truth. And the truth and tradition are at war with each other, because the flesh wants its candy, it wants its light, its trees and eggs and bunny rabbits and chocolate. And the flesh is programmed from childhood to yearn for those days. I remember being raised a Catholic, when I would just hear the word Sunday, I was so indoctrinated that joy filled my heart just hearing that word. And then, now I know it's a day of work, and it's nothing. It's just, that name is wrong. It's not the day of the sun. That's what Constantine did to us. It's programming and conditioning. So this conditioning that people are putting their children through, that I refuse to do, they're hypnotized. They're inoculated against truth because they yearn. Their flesh wants what it wants, and it doesn't want to obey, nor can it. But when the mind of the Spirit comes in, when you just obey one thing, and then you start wanting to obey more and more and more, and then suddenly His Spirit grows in you to such an extent that hopefully you're not going to be yelling at people or arguing with people, because we're not here to argue. We're just here, if they ask a question, answer the question, and then shut up. That's it. And then if that encourages another question, then answer that. But don't just keep talking, because they're not ready to hear it. It blinds them. I remember when I first woke up, I saw the unwillingness to even hear anything. I didn't want to hear it. It just sounded like madness to them, like I was in another dimension, or I was from another planet. And we are ambassadors from another place. In a sense, we're preparing the way for the whole earth to be obedient. And although the kingdom is within us right now, the world does not see that. And we see Him because we know Him, and we obey Him, and that's what we do. But the world does not want to obey him and doesn't have the ability to obey him because they're not obeying him. He won't give his spirit to anybody that doesn't obey. So hold fast. That's what 2 Peter was talking about. He said, don't lose your steadfastness. Stick with it. Stay in love with Yahushua. That's what Mark puts at the bottom of the screen. Stay in love with him. Don't, when you feel his face turning away from you, then you know you're doing something wrong. You know, he'll let you know. You can feel his face turn away. Even if you just think the wrong thing, that's when your prayers to him need to really step up. Because when temptation is near, the only escape is him. He'll drive the demonic realm away. Because that's what it is. It's coming at you. And it's coming at your relatives, the people you love dearly. And it's really ugly and sick to see it and torments you, to see the pain that your relatives are in because they're disobedient and they're being attacked because you're obedient and they're not. And that makes them seriously vulnerable. But it does say that in your household, your children and your unbelieving spouse are set apart because of you and who's in you. So there's hope there for all of us and our relatives. I hope that's encouraging.
Oh,
ahead, Sam.
I was gonna say, I'm not trying to be contentious, I promise, but I do want to ask this question. Or could it be we have not lifted him up yet? Because he said, if I be lifted up, I shall draw all unto me. Well, I left out a few words there, but could it be that we have not lifted him up yet?
I think we are lifting him up more and more so every day. And we do mention his name. Whenever we acknowledge him, then he directs our paths. And we're not doing anything wrong in that regard. But if we're quiet, he might be shutting our mouth because the people that he's not invited yet are not invited. But I have had my mouth shut in the presence of people, but that's very rare. It's usually I just acknowledge them, and you sow your conversation and salt it with acknowledging him. That's even in the presence of an unbeliever, especially so, really. But you do it all the time because you only think about him and he's only thinking about you, and he's guiding your steps. He's the light to your path, and it all comes forth just spontaneously, and it's like something that we just do. But then sometimes he'll have you just shut up. But when I see a crippled person in a wheelchair, or somebody on crutches, or somebody that is walking in a way that they're in pain, I will silently pray for that person. And, and if I have an opportunity to talk to them, I'll maybe say, Yahuah bless you and heal you. Not that I want to draw attention to them, but I'll say it just to them. And in my mind, I'm praying to Yahushua to guide them and heal their body. But these are sometimes the ailments that people have are blessings. And sometimes you hear somebody that has an ailment or some serious disfigurement of some sort, and they say, I'm glad that I have this. This is a blessing because it saved me from so many other things. And in prison, there's been prisoners that I talk to on the phone or read letters, and they say, I'm so glad that I'm in here and I have time to do this studying, because otherwise I wasn't gonna make it. And it wasn't the prison system that helped them, but being in there gave them the opportunity to study. And that's wonderful. I have lots of stories I could tell on that.
Okay, Brother Lew, we got a couple questions in the chat room, brother. I'm going to stick them up on the screen, right here on the screen, and you can answer them, okay?
Okay. Thanks, Mark Lew. All I had. I have to leave the show because dinner is here. It's hot and on the table.
I got it on the screen, brother. See, it's from William Kennedy. It says, "Estimate between his seed and her seed ends when?" I'm guessing he's talking about the prophecy in Genesis, Lew.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, if you ask that question, I can't see it here, but I can't find all the chat's questions. But if you think about...
I'll put it right up on the screen.
Oh, there it is.
You don't.
I see
there
it
you
now.
go.
It's right there on the screen. All right. What is it about the enmity? And enmity is a disguised word. It means hatred. It means really, really intense hatred between his seed and her seed. And when will that end? Well, that's up to Yahushua, I'm sure. But I would say, if I was just guessing, the hatred between his seed and her seed will end. Well, you have to identify who his seed means. The serpent. And her seed would be the woman. And the woman is all of mankind, really, and her seed. And then you've got the possibility spiritually that her seed is a reference to Yahushua, who is the Redeemer. And he's going to crush his head. So I'd say that the enmity will end when his head gets crushed by Yahushua. But to make that out to mean that there's evil people born in the world that are more evil than other people, what do they call him? Cain, the seed of Cain. Well, Cain doesn't have it.
Serpent seed.
Yeah, we're talking about the serpent seed. Yeah, and that's the teachings. A seed is sometimes a reference to teachings, and her seed. That's the wheat and the tares too. If you look at it spiritually, but the serpent seed, his hatred and the enmity between them will end when his head gets crushed by Yahushua, which is her seed. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to end when, Yahushua takes the old devil and throws him in the lake of fire. Be the end of the story. All she wrote.
Yeah, because that happens at the end of the millennium. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the millennium.
Yeah, the end of the millennium.
Okay, so here's the next one coming next.
Canaan means merchants or traders. Yeah, it's possible that this is referencing those who buy and sell in Shabbat. Absolutely. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because a Canaanite would be a trader, and he was talking about that in Zechariah chapter 14, during the midst of something that would seem out of context, because it's just like, well, what are these traders doing in here? Well, there won't be any. That's what he's saying. That's very good. I completely agree.
Okay, anybody else got any questions for Brother Lew? Brother Lew, would you like to wrap things up and do a priestly blessing over us. But before you do that, I'd just like to thank everybody that came on this evening. I hope everybody got as much out of this as I did. I think Brother Lew was extremely helpful with this evening, and a lot of good things came to surface, which I was anticipating is going to happen. So I'm really glad it did. And Lew was an inspiration and a mentor to all of us. And I appreciate you coming on and spending your time this evening with us. It's appreciated more than you know. And everybody came into the chat room, thank you so much for coming in there and supporting us in the chat room and asking questions, keeping track of the references, scriptural references for us and all that, and treating each other with love. It shows the world that we love each other. We're the Natsarim. And Dave, do you have a question, brother?
No, I'm good. I just enjoyed the talk.
And Dave, do you have a question, brother?
No, I'm good. I just enjoyed the talk.
Okay. And as a reminder, tomorrow, Zoom at noon, we'll continue on with our Romans study together in the book of Romans. And hopefully we'll see all of you and plus some there tomorrow. All right, so I'm done blabbing. Remember to stay in love with Yahusha.
Love you.
I'm done blabbing. Remember. Okay, Lew, I'm turning it back over to you, brother. Go ahead and do your closing comments and priestly blessing, if you will.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being here and listening. I really didn't prepare. I waited for Yahusha to just talk, and that's usually spontaneous. And I appreciate you being here. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, on this same channel. Well, Yahuah bless you and guard you. Yahuah make his face shine upon you and show kindness to you. Yahuah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Baruch haba b'shem Yahuah. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of Yahuah.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, beloved of Yahuah.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, beloved of Yahuah.